Hi guys, and welcome back to Dice Down Gaming, the Warmachine mostly weekly. We missed last week, but we're back. Today I've got myself Leo Robertson with me. He's from the Team England WTC. We're going to take a look at the Signar leader models. Leo's going to give us his experience with the models. He's going to tell us what lists he's ran and his overall thoughts. And then we're going to do our infamous tier list, which everyone always agrees with, and see where Leo's going to place them. I've got some new tech this week. Got a new microphone. So if you let know if you can hear me good, if my audio's okay, that would be great. How's everyone in the chat? How's your week been? If you played any Warmachine, thanks for joining us. And Leo, thanks for joining us as well, mate.
Thank you very much for having me on.
How's your week been, bud?
This week's been slower than usual. I've been very busy, but I still managed to play a couple of games since the Steamroller I played last weekend. So I've mostly been playing at home. So I played a couple of Dust games, been trying out some new Gravedigger ideas. How about you?
Fantastic. I sadly didn't get to play a game this week, but I painted a couple of models today. I painted Boom Howler and I painted Stormjaw for Foul Blood, which I'm probably going to take to Welst. So that was cool. And I played a Steamroller last weekend, so that's not bad. So it's been a good week. Been a busy week, but good. Sergeant Shamrock, thanks for joining us in the chat. Audio is good. Great. I had a great comment on one of my videos, which was, information is great. Audio is horrible. So hopefully, this can improve the audio. And if there's any more issues, please let me know. Dan Harwood, is this where a Signal player explains they don't have to be a gun line standing at the back? Maybe. I think it might be.
I don't play Signal gun lines.
Yeah, I mean, we're like, it's a little running joke with me and Dan, but locally we've got some Signal players which like they just tend to be a bit more defensive, and sort of, as they're sort of getting into the game, they tend to sort of lost on scenario. Like they'll place their defenses and they'll have their plan, but they're struggling to sort of push themselves up the board. Maybe your advice today might help with that.
Well, I've been through that journey whilst learning Storm Legion myself. So when I actually started out playing Storm Legion, it was kind of around the time of Caine's release. So naturally, as a Caine fanboy, immediately picked him up, played loads of games with this brilliant gun line, assassinated lots of people, lost on scenario. Anytime I didn't win by assassination. And I was like, right, I know I want a strong application for the WTC teams this year. I can't just win by assassination. I need to play scenario. So I dropped Caine completely, approached the game with two melee casters in Huxley and Calder, and then just learnt a whole different style.
That's a great segue. So you're going to be attending the World Team Championship this year. For my sort of viewers, maybe are newer to the game, what is the World Team Championship? What it's all about? And give us a little overview of that.
So the World Team Championship for Warmachine is typically held in Europe, usually in October. It's a 5-man team event. Usually about 32 teams. We had less a couple of years ago as a result of the Mark IV changes, but we're back to 32 last year and we're doing 32 again this year. It's across 2 days, usual Saturday, Sunday sort of situation. We all internationally get in there on Friday night. There's a lot of socialising on the Friday night. We then play 3 games on Saturday, 2 on Sunday, unless we have more than 32 teams, and then we may go to 6 rounds. It's a great opportunity to test your lists in kind of different metas, interacting with particularly the North American and Australian metas, which are generally different to Europe. It's also a great opportunity to just meet friends that you've spoken to on Discord, and it's a really social experience. It's what I'd say. Like it's competitive. We're all there to win. Everybody wants to do well, but it's a really warm and social environment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan says, visuals and audio look great. New co-host is an improvement. Hope you feel better soon, Dan. And Chris, Chimera chat. Okay, I see what he's done there. We're going to talk Storm. We're going to try and talk Storm Legion today. So I was fortunate enough to go to the Guild Ball World Team Championship. Me and Dan, the co-host, a few years back. And yeah, I totally agree that it's a really special atmosphere of everyone there. It's like they're all your people. You know, everyone's there that they love. They've got a similar interest, and like you say, there's people that you tend to keep in contact with all year that you only then get to speak to these 4 days that you're there. So it's fantastic. Fantastic social experience as much as a competitive experience. I found everyone is there obviously to win, but there's also a great sense of a group of people connecting, as just like socially going for a good night out, etc. So yeah, really, really great weekend. Good luck to Team England, yourself,
Thank you very
and the
much.
other team. Fingers crossed for you all. So we're going to look at the Storm Legion leader models today. Leo's going to give us a bit of his insight into his sort of experience with the caster, maybe what he will run with the caster, sort of spell racks, his thoughts on the caster, and then Leo's going to have a go, put it in a tier list, because then I can't be blamed for the tier list. Dan, thanks for joining us, and Chris, thanks for joining us. So we're going to kick off with the first one, Captain Athena di Baro, with 17 boxes with 14-17. Arc 6, but control 14, so that's always nice. Mat Rat 6. Defensive formation, if while in his model control range, and base space is one or more models in a battle group. Models in this battle group with an extra large base or smaller gain +2 armor. Polarity field, so you can't charge or slam made by contract. So if you're a Warjack or like a battle engine, you can't charge or slam Athena. He's got a crit Cortex spray, not bad. Some middling melee attacks. And her feat is Weathering the Storm. So while you're in her control range, friendly models gain an additional dice just on their attack rolls. And when resolving that roll, you're going to throw away the lowest dice, so it's a bonus for you. And while you're in control range and you're in an enemy model, you're going to roll an additional dice on attack and damage and throw away your highest dice. So you get an attack buff, and your opponent's going to get a sort of a attack and damage debuff for 1 round. And innate spells are Avenging Force. So if you damage a warrior model, you get a Warjack move, cohort move, and open fire for 1 focus. You can shoot a Warjack. So let's kick off with what have you ran Athena much, Leo? And if you did, what have you run with her?
Okay, so I quite like Athena. At the time when I picked up Storm Legion, I knew I was trying to find a competitive pairing quite quickly, because I knew I was going to attend the Belgian Masters and potentially was planning on attending others after that. So I didn't have the time to play many games with Athena, because I knew fairly soon that she wasn't as competitive as some of the other options. But I think she's got some great tools. The feat is obviously brilliant. It's a very, very strong defensive feat. It's universally excellent, and it obviously interacts really nicely with defensive formation. I think the change to her in January makes her viable now. I think before she was far too bad compared to the rest. But that change, bringing Avenging Force, I think the interaction with the general to have your double vengeance is lovely. But also just having that freedom to use it on any of your other models, as opposed to she had Hallowed Avenger before, which is just gives Righteous Vengeance to a model, so it's just a straight upgrade. But she's got a few problems for me that I've always struggled with. I think she's great defensively. I think she's personally well statted. Being a small base and then being 14-17, whilst easily being able to apply defensive formation is great. But her offensive capability is what I've always found lacking. So she's got this situational threat extension, which is okay. But again, your opponent has to interact with you in a specific way for it to matter. Her feat is a mat fix, but it's not. It's good, but it's not reliable, if that makes sense. So it's not just a straight buff. It doesn't make the maths necessarily. I think it increases the standard deviation whilst still increasing what the results you expect to get. So I've had some games where it's brilliant, and you get all sorts of crits on some of the crit effect weapons. You get just brilliant accuracy all around, and then you get some games where you're still just going to roll 2 2s and a 1. With the same problem anyway. But it's the real problem I found with her is I love a caster that can do a bit of personal work in a pinch, and Mat 6 is just terrible on her. I've never understood why. She's named after the Greek goddess of war, and she is the worst caster personally. So I've just found her a bit lacking in that department. It's like I said, I like the feat. I like what she can do in a list. I like the tools you can bring with her. I think she's really versatile. She brings the mercs in really, really well. She's still great with balloons because the feat affects those as well. So obviously Rat 7 sprays with Signs of Portents is really accurate. But I've just found her lacking depth in the late game. You've got this great feat turn, this great build up in the early turns. Once the feat's gone, once you start losing a Warjack or 2, defensive formation falls apart, you've lost your big feat. She doesn't then bring anything to back it up. Avenging Force doesn't matter as much when we're close together already, because the threat extension isn't needed. So I found that she's great in that sort of turn 2, 3, 4 territory, but she just falls off at 5 and 6, and that was something I struggled with.
Fair. So a few things for me. First of all, I can get along with liking a warlock / warcaster to do a bit themselves. One of the reasons I really like Firequill and Rangemonger is I always feel like Rangemonger can harpoon something in, and he can at least be a presence. And then you've got Firequill who does a lot himself. So I've always liked a leader model which feels like they give a bit of themselves to the game rather than just sort of being a passive. I walk and apply one buff and then put out an aura and then pass that activation. So I can get behind that.
Yeah.
And so with the feat, I suppose what you're saying is rather than being like a Carnage where jump into Mat 9 and a 3 will still hit, you may still roll. You might need a 5 to hit and you still miss on a 3, for example. So you can still, as much as it might help you, still relying on the luck of the dice a little bit rather than physically fixing the roll. Which makes sense.
It's the same kind of, it's the inverse situation of why Rough Seas is so much scarier than Deflection. Mathematically, they're about the same. The way Rough Seas affects your dice across a big dice pool is about the same as Deflection, but it always feels much harder to hit into Rough Seas than it does Deflection.
Yes,
and I think Athena's feat works the same way.
Yeah, sure, definitely. As someone who's running sort of like Marauder crew at the moment with like Duck and Cover, Force Barrier, Blur, and Terrain with Rough Seas. It does feel like if if I was +2 defense, would be less efficient as if I had Rough Seas.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can totally get behind that. Is there any sort of things that you think stand out with her? I mean, she seems very flexible. Like you say, you can use Mercs because the feat is nondescript. The general for the double sort of Righteous and Vengeance, and then it has its own. But is there anything that you think stands out of her, or do you think she's sort of good across the list, whatever you bring?
I think she's the best all-round caster for if you're getting into Storm Legion and you want a caster that's going to bring you some great rules, bring you some great abilities, but you just want to focus on specific models that you like. I think she's great. She's great if you go, actually, I don't really like the Storm Legion infantry very much, so I'm going to kind of bring the bare minimum, and then I'm going to bring some Mercs. I'm going to go really Warjack heavy. That's great. You can do that. Similarly, I think you can lean away from defensive formation. You could maybe just bring the General and a Corsair, keep it really simple. You could then bring something like Invictus, and then you could go more infantry heavy. So I think she's great for that. And I think she's great for newer players learning the game because I think her activations could be quite simple. So yeah, I think she shines in versatility, but just lacks that late game presence for me.
Yeah, and I think I agree in the sense that she's an easier one to learn a game with because all you're going to be worrying about is maybe you upkeep Avenging Force, maybe you cast a rack spell, you position her somewhere good, and then that's pretty much the limit of what you're getting out of her anyway. So rather than sort of like say a Calder where you might, or Caine where you might need to be doing stuff to get the maximum, there's the ceiling for her is quite low, so that makes sense. Is there any specific rack spells that you think sort of synergize with her, or not so much?
I think the obvious one is Arcane Shield. She's already playing this defensive skew. Arcane Shield, especially when you're bringing shield heavies or maybe even a Maelstrom to move it around, is excellent. You can pose this threat of, here's an armor 25 striker with all of the relevant buffs. Can you kill it? Right, probably going to have to use the Bless card to do that. Brilliant. So now, the following turn, I'm going to pose you a similar problem again, but now you don't have a Bless card. So it's situational on matchups, things like Dusk with all of the Dispel, it smells great. But into certain armies, it's brilliant. Electrify is always a good choice in Storm Legion. If we were ranking the spells, I would put that at S every time. It's one of the best damage buff spells in the game. She can appreciate Deflection, obviously, again, matchup dependent. So those would be my go-to 3 with her. I think she's a caster that, situationally, depending on list, likes something like Jackhammer, weirdly enough, which is probably quite a hot take because generally you rack that with Huxley and not really with anybody else. But again, depending on matchup, if you don't need the other defensive spells, if you're playing into something that's got a lot of Blessed, I think that's quite a nice one to bring from time to time.
Sure. And I guess the Arcane Shield sort of interaction is you have 2 stacks base to base for your defensive formation, and then your Arcane Shield 1, right? So, like you say, if they pop their Blessed, and then maybe you can hold defeat to the following turn, you're then in a real uphill battle to trade up for that. Okay, nice. I think you go, man.
Sorry, that interacts really well with a nice list variation I've played a little bit with, which is bringing Invictus along. Because Invictus is great under her feet, is already bringing you this armor 20 up to 22 with a spell piece. So you're going to bring Arcane Shield, put that on one of your own heavies. Now you've got these 2 pieces that are depending the blessed card for your opponent, whilst him still gaining the defensive component of Raef, because obviously it affects the enemy, not him.
Sure. So he's the Magnus and
nice
Victus. You've got Hell Wrought, right? So they're going to be 22, and then you've got your striker combo for 25, and then you're, like you say, Invictus is getting the feat as well. So that makes sense. And I suppose again, it's nothing you have to allocate to, so it frees up a bit of your
which she doesn't love allocating, obviously, with limited focus.
Yeah, Arc 6, I suppose, is limiting. Okay, that's great. I think to summarize Athena, we're saying pretty flexible. The feat, is universally applied to your army. Defensive formation, you're probably going to want a couple of Warjacks to make the most of that. If you want to run some Mercs, a good place, because they're gonna make use of the feat. And then we're going to go to everyone's favorite thing they always agree with. We're going to put her as a tier. So to anyone listening very quickly, S we're saying is overtuned. So S we're saying there is something we would bring down in their power level and it's probably a bit too good. A we're saying is a powerhouse, so very good. Nothing we would tuned. Probably if everything was A, that would be great. B we're saying is B is going to be very good. So not quite a powerhouse, but we still think competitive. C a step below. Very good. And then D, we say undertuned, and we'd like to modify something about that caster to bring them in line. So in your wisdom, Leo, where would you like to place Athena?
I think she bounces between B and C for me. I think she's got a few matchups where she's B, but I think she has to go in C for me. She's not bad. She's got good tools. She's got a lot of nice kit, but she's just lacking something.
That's fair enough.
For me, that something is she should probably be, Mat 7, maybe Power 15, something like that. Just a little bit more excited, personally.
Sure, because like you say, she does a little bit for the army, but maybe if she could give something herself, maybe that would bump her up. No problem. Yep. C it is. Sergeant Shamrock, I'd like a Chimera chat too. Well, luckily for you, Sergeant Shamrock, next week we've got the one only speed machine, Jamie Perkins, on the chat to talk everything Shadow Flame Shard. So join us then. Next up, we've got Captain Madison Calder. So we're 15, 17 this time with 17 boxes again. We're Arc 7 with Control 14, Mat 6, Rat 7, and a speed of 8 because she's on a horse, which makes sense. Bird's Eye, you're going to ignore Cloud Effect, Forest Train, and Line of Sight. She's got Dodge, so if you miss her with a ranged attack, she can dodge. And she's got Reposition because she's cavalry. Got one range 10, power 12 shot, which has got pistol and is lightning damage, I think. Is that lightning damage or is that Cortex damage? It's lightning damage, electrical damage.
It is, yeah.
And her sword is brutal charge, a power of 16 when she charged with critical Cortex damage. Not too bad. Got the feat of Ride the Storm, so +2 death while you're in your control range. Additionally, while in control range, a battle group gain dodge and riposte. So dodge, if you're missed by a ranged attack, you can make a move. And riposte is the same for melee. Oh no, if you missed, you can hit them back.
Yeah,
correct. No problem, makes sense. Crusader's Call, which is a great spell. For any faction model beginning a charge in her spell in a control range, get +2 speed. So your army is going to be faster from a Crusader's Call. And Rhythm of War, which is a sort of an end of turn reposition free for your cohort models. What are your thoughts on Calder, Leah?
So Calder is where a lot of my experience lies. I've played her extensively. I think she's absolutely excellent and very versatile, like Athena as well. But I think she's got that extra little bit that makes her great in the late game. So obviously, much more exciting personally for me. She's still not incredibly dangerous, but being cavalry and having brutal charge means that she can go and reliably charge and kill a warrior model, reposition to safety, which is nice. Her defensive stats are excellent. 15-17 with dodge is really, really good, especially for a caster with his control 14. She's going to sit at the back of the table a lot of the time. She's just applying buffs. She's not necessarily the most exciting in and of herself, but the way she makes the army play, I think, is really interesting. Obviously, very, very good feat. It's great in Storm Legion because kind of the worst defense you've got is 13s, really. So your sailors are 12, but 12 to 14 is still okay. The lovely interaction with her feat is actually on the Maelstrom. So I'm a big, big fan of the Maelstrom with her. You can totally run it without. I think she's absolutely fine running, maybe the general and a striker. So I've seen Deuce run with her quite a lot. I don't mind that. But with the Maelstrom being defense 11, weirdly, on a Colossal, going to 13, going to then 15 with something like a Dust Devil, like deflection 17, it can get really, really interesting. And giving riposte to a Maelstrom that's now def 13 is really nothing to sniff at. Great spells as well. Obviously, Crusader's Call is absolutely excellent. One of the best threat extension spells going. Obviously, it's contingent upon charging, but given the kind of list that you're playing with Stormguard, with Brutal Charge, with Cavalry, obviously being Cavalry, you were charging anyway. And then crucially for me, it's having 3 rack slots. Like, that's what really makes her shine, because Storm Legion have a great rack and she can really utilise it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is like a really attractive card. And like you say, and even to the point where, like, Athena's 14, but Calder's 15. And then you also get, like, defense, sorry. And then you also get, like, a bit of a melee output from her. Is really nice. So what sort of things would you sort of typically see, or you think you've ran with your Calder list?
Yeah. So the obvious first thing that everybody brings is 2 units of Cavalry. Now, I have ran 1 unit of Cavalry a lot of the time, purely because I think you bring quite a lot of risk with Cavalry in the current meta. You risk, you want to put one forward aggressively to project the threat range, and I think there's quite a lot of things in the meta at the minute that can quite comfortably remove 1 Cavalry model, and now your threat range is kind of heavily reduced. Even at half a unit, doesn't wear buffs very well. So I've ran 1 before. You absolutely can run 2. I've done that as well. Stormguard are obviously excellent with her. She's got the rack spells to bring Electrify every game. They're going to kill Warjacks very, very, very effectively. Even up to sort of armor 23, 24, they'll still one on them. So she's great with those. I think the battle group, like I said already, you can bring a Maelstrom, you can bring a mix of heavies. I've always preferred the Maelstrom. That's almost exclusively what I've played. Like the Maelstrom wears the feet really well. It takes Crusader's Call really well. She's got the rack spells again to be able to support it. You stick Arcane Shield on it. Obviously, a lovely interaction. For the Maelstrom with her, though, I'd always go cheap. I'd upgrade the hammer generally, because I just think the more expensive hammer is significantly better. But she's great with double mag bolter, and obviously giving it bird's eye is also lovely. Shooting straight through forests, charging through forests is nice. And the other thing that I think she always wants is the sailors, because again, like what we spoke about with Athena, it's all well and good bringing this Arcane Shielded Maelstrom, but your opponent's going to use the blessed card there, and there are quite a lot of lists that have the ability to kill that Maelstrom, but then to back it up with, okay, now here are some armor 23 sailors. So I think she really wants a unit for sailors. She wants a couple of Stormguard, a couple of Cav, and the Maelstrom is the way I've run her. Then for solos, she is always bringing 2 officers. There are so many matchups where the Grievous is excellent. You have lots of models, so you're always going to want the Precision Strike. And they're also Threat 13, Power 14 Weapon Masters, which is excellent. And the last solo, and the bit of advice I'd give to a lot of people is, if you're going to bring double Cav, bring Alexia. Because now I'm going to set the problem of projecting threat with the Cavalry. You're now given the option to try and kill that front model. I can at least then bring it back, and the following turn reset the same problem. So that's kind of what I ran. Obviously, I had some mechanics in there as well, just to make the Maelstrom function, to bring the repairs and empowers. But that's pretty much what I ran. I think Kruger works great with her. You can bring Stormblades. So I think she's quite versatile. Again, you can bring most of the options in the army.
Absolutely. So, sort of, and in terms of rack spells, you think maybe Arcane Shield, Electrify, and a third spell would be your typical options?
Deflections, the go-to. Obviously, there are games where that's just not necessary. And then there are a few options there. Snipe is occasionally good, because I played the Black 13th with her quite a lot as well. See the way the feet great, and Def 17, and there's such a problem-solving unit that I think Calder likes, because you're playing these big melee threat units that are kind of, the Stormguard, and you have 1 attack, they're only mat 6. She struggles with accuracy a lot. Like, that's the list's problem. So bringing someone like Glover to knock things down is great. So obviously Bracken Snipe helps there. Onslaught is considered the worst Signal rack spell a lot of the time, or one of the worst. Situation, brilliant, because you're going to combine that with Crusader's Call, you're going to combine that with some Precision Strike bubbles, and all of a sudden you can kind of charge through anything, get anywhere. It opens up a lot of flexibility. You've got the option for Pathfinder from the officers, but bringing an Onslaught frees them up to do Precision Strike and Deathly Strike as well. Ringarius wins. And Jackhammer, it's not an every game kind of a thing, but again, if you're playing into something like Sakura, just being able to go, right, I'm going to cast the relevant defensive spells, I'm going to kind of upkeep this. I've got some spare focus, I'm going to Jackhammer my power 23, maybe 25 Maelstrom into your high armor heavies. Like, it's not every game, but it comes up.
Yeah, and I like you said, I can see where that third rack spell is really excellent, because I imagine Arcane Shield and Electrify are pretty nailed in every game. So having that third slot to pick what you need seems pretty good.
There are very few matchups where you're not taking Arcane Shield, and even less where you're not taking Electrify. I don't know that I've ever really not racked Electrify, because even if you don't necessarily need the damage buff, the defensive component is also excellent.
Yeah, and the first time I read that, I actually thought it was target friendly faction model, and I thought, oh, that's a really good spell. Yeah. And then I read it again, and it was target friendly faction model / unit, and I was like, it's an even better spell. So I can understand why you wouldn't leave home without that. I mean, even Repulsor Field is nothing to scoff at. Like, getting rid of a Maelstrom with a Repulsor Field, I can imagine it's a right pain in the in an area. So I can see why she's so attractive. And like you say, like she's sort of got that defensive element with the feet, so you get the +2 def and you got some movement rather than just dive fixing. But then she's got that extra edge of, okay, if she charges in something, she's probably going to kill it. She's going to charge the cavalry model, so she's even more accurate. I think a really attractive caster, a really great set of rules. 3 rack slots is great. Is there anything you would maybe want to avoid with Calder as a caster when you're sort of making your list? Anything she's not so good into?
Yeah. So I think Calder can be slightly tuned to play into almost anything, but what she really doesn't want to see is anything that def skews. So Zat and Kaithos are kind of the main two. I think there are some Chimera lists that can bring execration and cause you some problems as well. Some more niche casters, I suppose, like Helith can be quite irritating, because she can kind of, if Helith can feet second, you're really going to struggle, because she's going to counter feet to bring your defense back to normal, and then she's going to defensive buff. So anything like that is irritating. And then any def buff spells can be quite annoying as well. So like, generally she's very, very good into Kador, but Mat 6 Stormguard are always going to struggle into def sort of 13, form superiority Kador Warjacks. Like, it's not always annoying, but it can be quite irritating. So anything that really def skews. So she's not Infernals really. And if I see Kaithos in a Crix pair, like, it's not a Calder drop.
That's fair. And I suppose is that's just because the lack of ability to raise your army's mat, I suppose, is why you're avoiding that.
Yeah, like, the faction has a lot of ways to do it, but it's always tied to the caster's spells, generally.
Sure.
Or, Athena's feet. Huxley's got ways of doing it. Wolfe's got ways of doing it. Calder just doesn't. Obviously, you've got cavalry accuracy, but the real problem is a lot of your punch is going to come from Mat 6 models in the Maelstrom and the Stormguard. Like, that's where the hitting power's really coming from. And Mat 6, once you get to sort of def 12, def 13, I already start doubting it.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, when you're relying on the Stormguard, which are, relatively easy to remove, you need your charges not to miss. Otherwise, you're going to lose what you've charged. What we charged with.
I've had a lot of games go south because my Stormguard couldn't hit 6s.
Yeah, we've definitely all been there before. And also, side note, I think Kaithos is going to be an absolute nightmare in the meta. But let's give Calder a rating. I feel like from the chat we were a bit warmer to her than we were Athena. So where are we going to put Calder?
Oh yeah, I don't know if this is a particularly hot take, but I think she's S for me. Ooh. I think she's the best caster in Signar.
Wow, okay. Big statement.
She's very, very good. I know it's not necessarily come across that way, but I think she's excellent. She can play almost anything. And she's got a great entry level. You can pick up Warmachine, play Calder for sort of 10, 15 games, and you'll start winning games. She's really, really good.
No, absolutely. I can get behind that. I can see, you've got the speed in your list, you've got the offensive output, you've got a way to make your things very hard to kill. I can totally see why you would place that rest.
She just takes the great tools in Storm Legion and makes them even better in kind of every way. And there isn't a unit that she's not doing that for. So we spoke about the Stormguard and the Cavalry a lot, but she's brilliant on her Sailors. Her Sailors are going threat 12, defense 14 with Repulsor Field, potentially armor 23. So it just doesn't matter what you pick with her. She's going to make it really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, being flexible is a massive strength in itself.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I asked this to anyone who puts anything in S. What would you remove or tweak with her to put her down into A?
I thought about this earlier because I knew this question was going to come up,
Yeah.
and I couldn't put my finger on it because I think if you make the feet worse in any way, it just cripples her. I think all of her personal output's fine. Her rack spells are fine. I think she needs 3 rack spells. I think she needs the spell she's got. The only thing I could think of is possibly reduce the control range, which wouldn't really make sense for an Arc 7 caster, but that control 14 means that she can always stay very, very safe whilst putting up deflection, whilst putting up the feet, whilst putting up Crusader's Call, to the point where I don't think I've ever really gotten her assassinated. I've managed to get all my other casters assassinated, but Calder's just always safe. So maybe control 12 would be the answer, because I do think she's slightly too good.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one as well because I think it's it's a sum of all parts almost situation where she's got lots of things that make her good, but there are lots of incremental things. Free spell racks, the Signar spell rack, the units you take with her rules. So there's no I'm gonna change this one thing and make her worse because she's a sum of all parts. So I can understand that. Sergeant Shamrock, all of Signar or just Storm Legion as best Signar caster. So do you think she's better than all the Gravediggers casters as well?
Oh,
It's a good question from Shamrock.
As a now hardcore Gravedigger player, that's difficult to answer. I've not got enough experience with the Gravedigger casters yet. Based on my Calder experience, though, I'd say possibly, but it's a hard comparison to make because of the styles then of the armies themselves, and the difference in racks as well is quite relevant. If Calder had the Gravedigger rack, I think she'd be worse considerably. I think she works because of the rack she's got.
Yeah, and that's fair. I suppose it's hard to compare when the toolkit and units she would have access to in Gravediggers is a different one to Storm Legion. So we'll sit on the fence with that one and sit with that. So next up we've got Captain Captain Huxley. Raef Huxley. Yeah. I think for me, I've only sort of rejoined Mark IV since pretty late January, pretty much February. I'm a competitive person, so I take an interest in the scene, but I've not really. I've only played 2 steamrollers, and I'm sort of still new to the scene. But Huxley is one of the names that I've seen come up the most from an outsider who's getting into the scene. Let's go over her card. So she's got 24 boxes. She's a good chunk of boxes. She's got Huxley, a Skystormer, and she's got a Ground Assault mode. We'll go through Skystormer. She's speed 7, 13, 19, a lot of boxes. Arcana 6 and Control 12 with Mat 7, Rat 6. In the ground mode, she's got a battle configuration which is Skystormer or Ground Assault. And you can change this in your maintenance phase and you start the game in a mode. If you're in your Skystormer mode, you're going to have Iron Horse, which is light and heavy warriors action from battle group, gain Pathfinder and reposition 5. Additionally, light and heavy warriors action in battle group gain +2 speed. I remember when I first read this rule, and I'm sure that number 5 was an incorrect number, but it is reposition 5. Repairable. This model can be targeted with repair special actions if we're a construct. Makes sense. And she has repo because she's technically flying around with some thrusters. She's got a heavy mag bolter, which is range 10, rat 6, and arm piercing at power 6. And she's got 2 fists, which have got beat back. 1 fist with beat back at power 15. I'll go through her ground assault mode, and then I'll go through the spells and then the feat. So this is the second mode. You can play Huxley at the start of the game. You'll pick one, and then you can swap in your maintenance phase. In the ground assault, you've got arcane precision. If you aim, you also get to ignore clouds and stealth for line of sight. Field marshal, all your cohort models are going to get steady and sturdy, so no knockdown and can't be pushed. You can still repair her, and she's resourceful in this mode, so she upkeeps spells for free. In this one, her gun becomes like a Tau rail rifle. It's now range 14, power 8, and still has armor piercing. And if you shoot a huge base or a building, but mainly a huge base, you are going to be a weapon master, power 8, armor piercing shot. Her fist is actually 1 less power in the ground mode, which is odd, but that is what it is. And then we got to her feat, which is she gains 6 focus when she uses her feat. You kind of have more focus points than our arc, so you want to like load off and then feat. And then you can immediately allocate them focus to your battle group. 3 spells, fail safe, which is +2 armor, and if you're a crippled system, you ignore that for the model with fail safe. Full throttle, model beginning activation can run, charge, and make slam for free. And they gain boosted attack rolls. And ground 0, models within 3 of this spellcaster suffer power 13 blast. Sort of like your throwaway nuke for the caster. It's a lot taken with Huxley. It's almost 2 warcasters in one card. What are your thoughts, Leo?
Okay, so Huxley has been my other main caster competitively. The second the January update changes happened, actually, I remember when I first read the card, just the excitement, the options that I knew that was going to bring, because I'd tried to write lists with Huxley before the update, and it was always where's the threat extension? Like, some good rules, but where's the threat extension? Like, the list just doesn't function without that. Like you said, there's a lot to dive in for with Huxley there. So much flexibility, personally. Like, the list is less flexible than with the other 2 casters we've spoken about so far, but that ability to really change to what the game state needs is brilliant. So the first thing everybody looks at is Skystormer. Like, giving Iron Horse is obviously phenomenal. Like, it tunes up the jacks massively. You've got the perfect war jacks to really benefit from that. You've got great threat range kind of initially. You've got good mat. You've got reasonable defensive stats, but not amazing. So that Reaper 5 really helps keep the battle group alive. Skystorm is brilliant. It's obviously really, really good if you go first, going in Sky mode, because you're going to trample, you're going to reposition, you're going to take up a lot of board presence really quickly. I think ground mode's underappreciated. I think it's situationally excellent. It's not on every game kind of a thing, but there are certain matchups where it's really, really good. And those are any casters with sort of gallows or anything like that. So Shadow Tongue is the one that comes to mind. There's quite a lot of knockdown in Brambloods, quite a lot of crit knockdown. So you've got gallows on himself. You've got the drag on the frogs. You've got a lot of tools that Shadow Tongue really wants to utilise into you, and you're just going to stay ground mode most of the game. You're going to turn it off completely. Having the ability to change back means you always maintain that pressure of the threat range, right? Even if you're not in Sky mode at the time. Sort of Baronova is another nice example with Gallows, where it's really useful to have. So I'm a big fan of that. Personally, I like Huxley a lot as well, much more so than Calder and Athena. Huxley is going to get stuck in, is going to do work, is so tanky as well with that armor stat and those boxes, that Huxley can afford to get involved and be in the middle of the table and still not die, which I really appreciate. Touched on there the changes in the offensive stats between the different modes. Obviously, the gun gets significantly more dangerous when you go into ground mode. The melee gets slightly worse. I think the idea behind that is that if you're flying, you're kind of coming down from the sky to hit somebody. So I guess there's a little bit more power there, and the mat gets better if you're in ground mode, in Sky mode as well. Sorry. But ground 0, like you said there, it doesn't come up often, but it has games where you go in, you charge, you kill a model. A lot of the times it's, I want this focus for feating. I've got an odd number of focus currently because I've kept something. I'm going to ground 0. I'm going to get rid of the focus. I'm going to kill, maybe 3 or 4 warrior models. I want to feat, and then I'm still going to cast potentially the upkeep spells I wanted anyway. But yeah, I think Huxley is really, really good. The list is obviously quite one-dimensional in what you're taking. You're going to bring lots of warjacks. It's kind of obvious. There are a few approaches. The standard Huxley list is going to be probably two or three strikers, the general always, and 3 courses. The idea behind the courses is the interaction with full throttle. You're going to bring those crit punching spikes with AP, crit AP punching spikes, and you're going to fish for crits with all your boosted attacks. I've never liked that style. I played it. I didn't love it. I don't think it's bad. I can totally understand why people bring it, but I get so fearful that my dice will betray me. So I've sort of ran 5 heavies, generally, has been my approach.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so there's a good point that I sort of skipped over, really, that her mat is 7 when she flies, and her rat is 7 when when, I'll just say they.
It's
he. When he is on the floor. Like, I suppose, yeah, the spells and the very good sort of field marshals lend you to the warjacks. Is there anything you think that you think she is sort of wants to avoid as a warcaster?
This is the one caster in Signal where I'd say you can slightly tweak the list and you can kind of play into virtually anything. There are very few things where I went, no, that's really not a Huxley match. Extreme gun lines, I would say, is kind of the only thing, because typically you're going to bring minimal infantry, typically, and you're going to bring lots of light warjacks, lots of heavy warjacks. But because you're always trying to go quite cheap and maximize how many you've got, it's a lot of armor 16, a lot of armor 18. Now, you play against something like Boris, something like Caine, something like Firequill. Before engagement, you're going to lose half of your battle group. And Huxley just really doesn't want that. Huxley doesn't want to rack decel. It's just not a game that you want. So generally, any pairings that are going to bring really, really competent gun lines, I'm probably going to avoid playing Huxley into. But like I said, I played Huxley and Calder, and Calder answers gun lines really well with the defensive feat and better use of deflection. So yeah, that's all I'd say there. But he's then great for skewing into a lot of other things. You can bring kind of Electrify on the rack and Jackhammer, combine those for better armor crack. You've got full throttle, so you're really accurate. You've got great threat range. You've got this brilliant hit and run kind of potential. You've got a really good defensive spell. Like Failsafe is absolutely excellent, especially with the kind of heavy battle group lists you bring in, because you're probably bringing some mechanics, but you don't really want to bring 2 units, I wouldn't say, because you're going to use accumulators to fuel the jacks. So you're probably not really bringing room for repairs. You might bring Old Faithful, but again, you don't want to be spending your mechanics activations repairing stuff, so bringing Failsafe is really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, with the flexibility, for a while, I had a little go of running Ragemonger and Shadow Tongue. And obviously, I played Ragemonger with a couple of Roggers, so it was like 3 drags in one list, and Shadow Tongue had Gallows and Perdition, and her going to ground mode completely nullifies both of those advantages. Yeah. So the flexibility is obviously really good. Chris Clare, stronger caster in the game at the moment. What a shout from Chris. But then he did clarify, well, maybe list. So he backed down on the hot take after saying it. So she's certainly, I think, as someone who's, like I said, new, one of the names that I heard thrown about a lot as, this is one of the metacasters you must know about. So that might be...
Absolutely.
So, yeah, really, really strong. A fantastic flexible caster. Maybe a bit more linear than the first 2 we've had into how you're going to build your list, because obviously it feels like it revolves around the cohort list rather than sort of you can bring anything. But like you say, with the way you can tweak her, it sounds like you can play into most things. So where were we going into Huxley? I feel like you were less hot for Huxley than you were Calder, but more than Athena. So where are we placing?
Oh yeah. If you'd have asked me this question 2 months ago, I'd have unequivocally said S tier.
Okay.
Absolutely. But there's been one pivotal release since then, or one matchup that I needed Huxley to play that I think knocks him down to A, and that's the release of the Trichimerax. So Calder doesn't like Kyrax at all. Kyrax is the absolute perfect build for chewing through Calder infantry. So for me, it was always the obvious, brilliant. Like Huxley can be the Chimera matchup, but the Trichimerax nullifying jackhammers with its head option is the big problem. Or the tail, sorry, I think it is, where it can just spend fury, because it's often treated as if I'm going to cast an aggressive spell at you, you can kind of cancel it out like Arcane Vortex, but the model that I'm attacking with is going to be within 3 inches, so you can just stop my jackhammers 4 times.
That's the Arcane Vortex tail that you were speaking about.
Yeah, the negation tail, I think that's the one, yeah. So I think that just knocks it down a little bit, because the Shirish matchup was really good before. I spoke with obviously Jamie, who you've got on next week, quite a lot about that matchup, and we kind of introduced that generally it's going to be Huxley Kyrax is kind of a common matchup, and that's quite 50-50. Now we feel that you bring Sharish with a Trichimerax and you've just got a bit of an advantage. Before that S, but now I'm going to go A. Still very, very competent, but one of Huxley's key matchups for me just got a little bit harder.
Interestingly, so slightly off tangent here, but if someone was running Kyrax Cyrus, which I understand is again a popular pairing for the Shadow Flame Shard, and you're running Calder Huxley, are you now deciding to drop Calder over Huxley?
I think this is just where we get into a brilliant list chicken, because this is now a game of bluffs, double bluffs, triple bluffs. Because my opponents, especially if they know the matchup as well as I do, they're thinking, right, okay, so I know that Huxley is typically fairly good into Chimera. I know my Shirus is going to counter that quite nicely. But Shirus into Calder, I don't think is amazing for the Shirus player. It doesn't bring the map fixing in the same way that Karax does. So she brings some in Hand of Destruction and Shadow Bind on her spears, but you're not Shadow Binding 10 Stormguard, 15 Stormguard. So I think that's not a great matchup necessarily for the Chimera player. And then likewise, I don't think as the Signar player you want to play Huxley into Shirus. So you're kind of thinking, right, let me drop Calder into Shirus, that feels okay, but Calder into Kyrax, still really bad. So I think it fully ends up this chicken. For me, it would most likely come down to either my knowledge of the player, do I know if they prefer one caster or the other, or scenario. If it's something like Two Fronts, which is a scenario that I think Huxley's pretty good on, and obviously Calder with a Maelstrom is sometimes less good on, depending on the terrain, then that could swing my decision. Alternatively, with a Maelstrom, you're never going to want to see an obstruction in the middle of the table, so that might swing it. So it's probably a case of what does the table look like, what does the scenario look like.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's some great insight into sort of like the highest level list pairing. And yeah, list picking is one of them things where you have to just roll the dice and you both have to reveal your list and you go from there.
Sometimes you smile when you see what your opponent's dropped. Sometimes you cry a little bit inside. You've just got to do what you can with the situation. I don't think either of any of those kind of outcomes are truly awful. Like, you can play Huxley into Shirus, but it's just a lot harder than it used to be. It's still not impossible, but it's just worse. Yeah,
sure. The Dry Chimeric is certainly hard to remove, and even harder for me is Brian Bloods because of the Mortal Fear. So everything is living. So it's pseudo armor 23 with Dragon's Blood and Ribbon. So that thing is a pain in the behind.
It's tough.
And the rapid healing that you can't turn off as well. Just great.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got this Grievous. I'm really great at dealing with tough and healing, and then there's just this one model that can't be Grievous. Yeah. No ways around it. There are very few armies in the game that can actually get around rapid healing on the Colossal, and it's just a nightmare.
I suppose you have to just have a model that says in X range you can't remove damage. Is that the only way? I think
the only ways that I'm aware of is Entropic Force is the obvious one, which a couple of armies have. I know Grimkin have it, I know Dusk have it. I'm sure there are probably others I'm not really aware of. And then Moraine technically could cast Mortality on feet turn enough times, sort of a thing, to stop healing.
Sure.
But not really. There are a few casters with Torment, but none of them can cast it enough times, so you're just stuck fighting through rapid healing. It's not really many ways to avoid that.
Yeah, I suppose it's the Purgation Tower that makes it difficult.
Yeah, that's the. Without that, it'd be okay because you've got so many spell options to help with the problems it sets. But that combination with rapid healing is really good.
Yeah, I'm probably going to do a little video on the Trichimerics and how hard you can make it to kill, because that is very hard.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's tough.
Let's go to Warcaster number 4, Major Allister Caine, which I think is one of the only casters who survived every edition of Warmachine so far. So well done to you, Caine. Yeah. You're doing well. 15 boxes, which is low, but we're looking at Def 17, which is high, and Armor 13. Arc 6, Control 12, but with Speed 7, and we're Rat 9. So big numbers for Rat. We're evasive, so if you're missing any attack, melee or range, you're going to dodge 2. He's got a Field Marshal for your cohort models. They're going to get evasive. Headshot, which is you can't tough, and when he kills something, it's removed from play as well. And Leadership, your gun mages within 10 are going to get headshots. As far as I know, it's just his cadre for now.
Yeah, in Storm Legion, yes.
Sure, yeah. In Gravedigger's have now got their gun mages. So he's got 2 shots at range 12. Obviously, we're at 9. He's got pistol and he's got gunfighter as well. We've got Heartseeker, which is roll an additional dice for damage and throw away the lowest dice. Sorry. Thunderbolt, which is a D3 push, and if you crit hit, you're gonna becomes knockdown. It's not a slam. Sorry. And then Witchmark, if you hit something, you can then can target and normally hit that model with spells. Okay, so you can shoot them once and then calamity something and it will hit, I suppose.
Yeah.
And you can reload, so you do 2 shots a turn if you want to. Arcane Conflagration, which is your friendly gun majors and friendly faction warjack models get blessed magic and power and +2 power. And if you've got an ammo type, like if you're a gun mage like Caine, you can pick 2 ammo types for each shot. We've got 2 spell racks and 3 base spells. We've got Calamity, which is classic -2 death and arm. Heightened Reflexes, which is it can't be knocked down or made stationary. And we've got Teleport, which is a 6-inch place, and the your activation ends. So you're going to want to do that at the end of your activation. What are your thoughts on Maester Allister Caine, Liam?
Okay, so first things first, just a minor correction. Evasive, you described it as being dodge. Evasive is
it's only
if you're
ranged.
hit by ranged attacks, yeah. But there is a slight interesting thing that some players might not spot. If you get missed by an AoE, you still count as being hit by it for the purposes of evasive. That's an interesting thing for people to note. I like Caine, but not as much as other people. I played Caine a lot when he first came out, and then one small change happened in January that kind of flew under the radar. That wasn't a big thing people spoke about. That killed him for me, and that was the removal of spotters. So I think Caine objectively is great, but the kind of build you're bringing in Storm Legion is a lot of the Warjacks are a lot of kind of really high quality attacks, but not that many of them. You know, you bring in the railguns, you kind of one brilliant shot per striker. You might bring a second gun on the other hand, but again, that's only 2 good shots per, maybe for sort of 14, 15 point Warjack. And not having spotters anymore to just kind of ensure that accuracy really hurts. There's a few lists where their defense stacking is just really, really good, and you start looking at boosted 9s, boosted 10s, boosted 11s, and maybe higher. And that's just unreliable. And it just turned off my passion for him. I still think he's good, but I think he's got a few glaring weaknesses, because what Caine says is, I'm going to bring one of the best gun lines in the game. I want to shoot from very far away. Having snipe on the rack is obviously phenomenal for him. I want to throw it really far with guns. I'm going to say, all right, I've got this big scary feat. It's going to affect all my AoEs. It's going to affect all my gun mages. It's going to affect these armor-piercing weapons. I'm going to hit you first with guns, and I'm going to hit you hard. But I think he struggles into too many lists for me to enjoy him. I think brilliant death skew lists, I think he just really struggles into. Brian Blood's just in general sort of rough seas and weight of boxes. Again, like I said, he's not got that many attacks in the list a lot of the time. So if you've got warrior models that can kind of survive the blasts and the electro leaps that you might be bringing, then I think you can struggle into that. And he struggles into just straight up high armor. So things like Sakura, things like Horus, like any list with quite a lot of shield guards. Again, like I said, you've not got many shots. They're just really good shots. You don't want Dusk and Crix to be shield guarding your railguns. So I think he's great. I think he's personally excellent. I think he's got all of the rules that you'd want someone like Caine to have. But I think the tools that Storm Legion are kind of bringing for him to then buff, I just don't think are as effective as they used to be pre-update, interestingly enough.
Yeah, so a couple of questions for you. First of all, I'll clarify, I was completely wrong with evasive. I said when you missed by a melee or ranged attack, completely wrong. It's when you're hit by an enemy ranged attack. So, like you say, if someone misses you with a blast weapon and they roll blast throw on you, you'll then still hit. Yep. And if you're caught in an AoE, you'll still hit. So, good pick up. As someone who has only played post January update, what are spotters?
Spotters was a card that gave a model mark target, essentially. So you had this once. It was a 2-point card, so it's quite expensive. It wasn't the easiest to use, but you had this once per game. Right, I'm gonna send this model in over here, and I'm just gonna project this aura a +2 to hit against all of these models. And it had so many matchups where it would swing things. It gave you such a potent assassination threat. It gave you, even into lists that weren't gonna death skew, it just gave you reliability, right? Maybe into the death 12 Warjacks, you're at 6 with your heavies. You need 6s to hit. You're gonna miss 6s. You don't really want to boost them, but you'll miss them if you don't. Not all the time, but occasionally. Spotters just brought that reliability, especially on that feat turn where you want to get most of the work done. Because the only Warjack who's really reliably hitting things is Deuce with powerful attack. Outside of that, there was always jeopardy that you'd just miss. And for me, Spotters bringing mark target really turned that off. And there was quite a lot of models who wore it really well. So the big one for me was the Black 13th, because you can go get loads of great work done and then Reaper one of them, often Watts, because he was kind of the worst, into a really great position, and then the rest of the army just gets tuned up and you gain so much reliability from it. That for me, like I said earlier, I really get fearful that I'm just going to roll a little bit below average and my plans are going to fall apart, and Spotters just really fix that for me.
Right, yeah, sure. So Spotters was the thing that my pig Dirges have, that within 5 inches
yeah,
plus
yeah,
2.
exactly.
Right, and that used to be a card. Okay, I understand. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's cool. So yeah, I feel like I know what you're saying. Like, if you were to write a cool sort of assassination based gun mage warcaster, everything on the card that you want is probably here. But in the meta game and the actual game of practicality and the game we play, it's probably not the overall most effective way of actually playing the game. And also, like you say, like power 12. Okay, so you're power 14 specifically on your feet, and you could boost with Heart Seeker. But if people are skewing into say armor 23-ish, which isn't I say too uncommon, you're still then struggling to do any damage at all. So he's got limitations, and then I suppose, like you say, if you were going to say, oh, maybe I could make Caine my dude spam list, the army itself, you pay quite a premium for your units, so you can't even bring a massive volume of gun mages to buff with the feet and maybe play as a dude spam list. So maybe limited in its options and a lot more one-dimensional than maybe what we've seen before.
Yeah, which I think will come as a surprise to people, but I just think he's too straightforward and has too many answers, because obviously the January update came, and the big first reaction from it was, oh my god, Storm Legion are brilliant. Like, that's what everybody spoke about, and everybody knew Caine was like the big top dog, because he was in December just before we got the update. And then obviously everybody goes, brilliant. Okay, so what am I doing to play into Caine? Right, what defensive tech am I bringing? And unlike sort of Sarafel last year, who was the big scary caster, this year with Caine, the what do I do to be good into Caine is really straightforward. It's, okay, what defensive buffs can I apply against guns in my army? And every army has, a defensive shooting spell on the rack. And there's just so many lists I think he struggles into. Things like Boom Howler in Brian Bloods. You bring Rossies, you bring that feat. Really difficult matchup for Caine. And I think every faction has a list like that, to the point where I just kind of got fed up of like, okay, it's always list chicken and I can never really drop him. So I think he's good in theory, but the meta that we're in at the moment, I just don't think suits his playstyle in Storm Legion.
Yeah, I can get that. Recently, I had a bunch of friends and we were like just talking about Welsh, and we were like, oh well, what are the archetypes we think we might play against, right? Because we'd like to go and do well. We're all competitive. So one of them is like Gunline, for example. So we all said, like, do we have a list in our pairing that if we're playing against a Gunline, we can drop? And I think if you naturally have a list like that, you've already prepared for Caine without thinking, I'm going to prepare for Caine.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and I think if you most list pairings probably do have a list for gun lines. So he's probably covered by most people's pairings, which then, like you say, you're going to play list chicken almost every game with one of your casters, which you're not looking for. Chris Clare says he also dies to boosted missed blast rolls. Yes, absolutely. I think.
Yeah, really bad.
Like Fire Quills, Reef Trolls are power 12 on the feet turn, so dice -1 if I miss. The Abyssal King, lots of things can threaten armor 13 with
loads of things. Yeah.
Missed blast rolls, and I think that's more to do with how blast works than Caine being bad, but that's a conversation for another day. So I can understand where you're coming from. A bit one direction, a bit linear, a bit limited in his options, and then when you do decide to put him in your pairing, you feel like you're then sort of playing 50-50 every game, that if you could even drop him.
And I feel like I'm telegraphing to my opponent too badly.
Yeah, sure.
My opponent is looking at my lists and going, well, actually, neither of my lists can be shot very well, or one of my lists is a really hard anti-gun line. So I know you can't really drop Caine, and I just don't like that dynamic. I want my opponent to be going, I really have no idea what he's going to drop here. Both of his lists are viable.
Yeah.
Caine, I just think makes it too obvious what you want to do as the player.
I totally get that. So from S to D, where are we going to put the old man?
It still has to be B for me, like upper B, encroaching on A, but still just B. Very good. Not the powerhouse that he was a couple of months ago for me. If the meta shifts, if gunlines become a little bit less popular in general, I think he goes back to A. I still think he's very good. I just think he's missing I think he's missing something that would make him what people think he is, if that kind of makes sense.
No, I get that. He's well, when you think of him as this sort of Supremo range shooty assassination dude. I feel like the meta has sort of fallen away from what he would like to play into, and then also
Yeah.
his list is sort of some high quality shots, but isn't all that shooty in terms of volume fire.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Again, Storm Legion specifically.
Yeah, like you say, it's not it's just the models that you have available to choose.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, we're on to Major Anson Wolfe, which I love this guy's model. It's very cool. We're 16 boxes with Def 16, Armor 16, which is pretty sweet. We're Arcana 7 with Control 14, Speed 6, and Mat 8, which is a lovely number. Blood Quenched, which is like Butcher's Rule for each model you kill in his melee damage roll. You get to destroy the model, right? Yes. It gets +1 armor and +1 melee damage for each model it destroys its turn. And it lasts 1 round. So if you kill a few guys, you can be tanky for your opponent's turn as well. And Sidestep, which is really great, a 2-inch advance on your initial attacks. 2 pretty beefy attacks, one Electro Leap, 1 Beat Back, both power 15, Mat 8 as well. We've got a feat called Give 'em Hell. When 1 or more friendly faction models are destroyed by an attack in your control area, immediately after the attack is resolved, 1 model in your battle group currently in its control can advance to and make 1 basic attack. And you can do that with more. You can do that more than once per turn with the same model, by the sounds of it.
Yep.
Very cool. That's pretty great. Energizer. Oh, that's what Firequill used to have. I'm constantly reminded about that. Each model in this battle group, because I didn't play Firequill pre-update. Whenever I speak about it, people are like, well, we used to have Energizer, it used to be a lot better. And I have no idea what that's like. Each model in the spellcaster's battle group that is currently in its control range can immediately advance up to 2. You can only cast it once, so once per turn your cohort models can jump a bit. And Positive Charge, it's like an older Mark II spell. +2 melee attack and melee damage rolls, and while within 3 friendly faction models gain that as well. That's really great. What are your thoughts on Wolf?
Okay, I think this is, to me, the most difficult caster to speak about. I don't have tremendous amounts of experience with him. I've played games with Wolf. I played into Wolf quite a lot because Matt, one of the other England WTC players, has played Wolf quite a lot, and we've played quite a bit. We played the Mirror quite a lot of times, so I've got some experience into him. But when I've played him, I've always struggled because it feels like the rules on his card are, again, without context, absolutely excellent. But they all pull the list in different directions, and it actually makes it really hard to, for me, I found it really hard to write a list that I enjoyed. So the first thing that stands out is the feat. Okay, the feat's absolutely excellent. Like, I'm going to want Wardrax with guns to benefit from all of the warrior models they want to take. And I want those models to die. If you immediately look at, right, what are cheap warrior models? So the Stormblades, 6 points, 5 guys, it's good value. I want those guys to die. I want the triggers for the feat. Like, that's the obvious thing you look at. I think you then look at which Wardrax are going to give me the best feat triggers. And the popular one people turn to is the Maelstrom. Now, the reason for this is a couple of reasons. First one is that the Maelstrom can't have control effects applied to it, so that it can't make the feat shots. It can't be knocked down, can't be stationary. It's always making the shot. It's not advancing, but it's always making the shot. You put a snipe on it, you give it a bombard, you give it a mag bolter. You've got these 3 weapons to choose from with the spray as well, all really long range, and the opponent can't stop you making those attacks, really. So it's great synergy there. But like I said earlier, you've got all of these tools, and you're always missing out on something. So you could bring a Maelstrom with him. You've got great triggers for the feat, but he can't advance with the feat, and you don't have Energizer. It's not benefiting him at all. So you can look at them, and this is the approach I tried to take. Let me bring a couple of heavies and maybe a light or 2. So I tried to play around with the general and 2 strikers, I think, a little bit more, and a courser in some builds, and tried to build a more balanced approach. You make more use of Energizer, you make better use of the movement on the feet, and you can play a more melee-centric game with the feat as it is, because you can use it as a threat extension more effectively, and that's great. Again, the positive charge is slightly better if you've got more models. You're not projecting it in as large an area as you are with the Maelstrom massive, it's 120 mil base, but you're putting it in more locations, which I thought was great. But there's just something I can't really explain about the way he plays. I always just found lacking. I think the best way I can describe it is I think he has a roughly comparable playstyle to Calder, but just doesn't do it quite as well. He's bringing you this, like, positive charge is also excellent, which I haven't mentioned. he's bringing you threat extension on the Warjacks and kind of himself with the feet and the Energizer. He's really personally dangerous, which I enjoy, but that also leaves him liable to assassination because you want to get him involved. And 1616's good, but also because of the style of caster he is, that's often, sitting in the front lines, getting involved. It's not always good enough. But he's bringing this excellent support package that, like I said, again, objectively really, really good, but you're always sacrificing something. And I've found that if I bring a Maelstrom list, I just hate not getting the Energizer. It's just full spell wasted on his card. If I bring the multiple Warjacks, then there's just so many games where it's like, my punch just knocked him down or something like that, and now that Warjack's not making the attack. And the big problem for me with Wolfe was I think he really struggles into death skew, not because he can't mat fix with positive charge, but because your feat is useless into death skew, because a Rat 6 Maelstrom is just never going to hit like Def 16, 17 models when you start applying defensive buffs. So yeah, like great all round, brings a really flexible list, but I've always found that I've just not quite liked the way he's played, and I've just found Calder to do a similar thing better.
Yeah, totally understand where you're coming from. It feels like you'd almost want like a 120-point list, right, to fully utilize everything that he could do. I understand where you're coming from with the out of activation attacks. There's Brian Buzzer Morga Borza, and I thought, well, this is going to be great. I'm going to get like a free ranged attack every turn, and then actually I've got outside of Firequill's feet, which actually is why I take it's quite good in Firequill's feet. Outside of Firequill's feet, you have like a 1 Rat 6 shot which you can't boost, and actually you think, oh, actually this isn't so good because I suddenly need a 7 or an 8 to hit, and I can't boost the damage anyway. So yeah, I can understand where you're coming from, and like you say, with the Maelstrom where you're getting good value shots and you can't stop that, you're then losing out on the movement from Energizer and the movement from the feet. And yeah, I mean, like, it would be nice maybe if he was maybe like 15, 17 or 18, because while Def 16 is decent, as soon as you're knocked down or flared or shadowbound or one of those effects, Armor 16 is not so good. So and you want to be up there making the most of Blood Quenched and doing his thing, because offensively he's quite impressive. But keeping him alive, I imagine, is a fine balance. Is there any things that stick out that you think are decent with him, or he looks quite flexible in what he can bring?
He is, yeah. I think the biggest thing about him, once you look past the feet, is positive charge for me. Like, that's the biggest thing that I look at with him, and I'm like, okay, how can I maximize this? You're mat fixing for anything in the army, all of the infantry. Like Storm Guard going to mat 8 is so much better than them being power 19. So obviously, because power 17 Jack Hunters we're already killing like armor 22, 23, 24 Warjacks, but they were missing Def 12 Warjacks like quite a lot of the time. So them going to mat 8 is excellent. You can get power 20 cavalry. You can actually bring the Stormblades up to a reasonable power. You can sort of get to 16, and that's quite good. So I absolutely love positive charge on him. But what I've always found lacking is, like I said, you've got this split list, and positive charge and the feet want you to bring infantry, but then because he doesn't threat extend the infantry at all, it always has felt to me like you kind of just get hit first. So the feet, like, because he just doesn't bring the threat extension that Calder does, it almost feels like the feet doesn't end up as defensively effective as hers, despite on paper being a better feat, if that kind of makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. The feet is going to be vulnerable to gun lines, first of all, where they just shoot you and then you move a model, but they're outside of your threat. Then, like you say, if you bring, say, a bunch of Storm, they're all different Storm names, but the Storm guys on foot, say Stormblade Legionnaires or Storm Guard Legionnaires, you're probably you're gonna take the hit. I suppose you could bring some Storm Lance Legionnaires and hope you might be able to get the first hit, but like you say, there's nothing to push you from that. I'd say like 10 to 13 inch threat range is like the standard threat range without a buff, and then when you jump to say like 15 or 17, suddenly you're that much ahead of people without a buff. So, and Wolf falls into that range of I have no speed buff. So anyone that suddenly has that plus 2 inch movement gets the alpha on you, and I suppose there's probably some play around it where the order you kill Wolf's models, you can also then work to nullify the feat as well.
I actually got really excited about him at one point. I was like, right, okay, I'm gonna put Calder aside for a couple of weeks. I'm just gonna play loads of Wolf. I'm gonna see how it feels. And it actually just surprised me how many effects there are in the game that completely bypass his feet. Or give you minimal feat triggers. So anything that sprays and AoEs, anything that kills multiple models with one attack only gives you one feat trigger. Something like Chum. Chum's going to come in and kill my entire unit with one flail swing. That's one feat trigger. Anything with Signs of Death, which I think is 3 factions now, bring an RFP, no feat triggers. So on paper, brilliant. But you start looking at, okay, I'm maybe going to bring 20 to 30 warrior models, and there are lists that are still only going to give me like 2, 3, 4 feat triggers, and that I just sound really upsetting.
Yeah, sure. And
So,
I suppose, like you say, if it's on destroyed, anything that disables you on boxes, you don't even get the trigger, right? So anything with snacking, which is like every troll heavy,
snacking as well,
will deny it the defeat. So yeah, I suppose that's a really important point for his feat, that there's also an awful lot of effects that will deny defeat completely.
Yeah.
And I suppose it looks like the way he's been built, without giving any sort of defensive buff to the army. Obviously, you've got the offensive output of Polished Stars. You can take Arcane Shield, I suppose. But they're hoping that you are able to at least trade up or equalise the game position with your feet. So if you do get that denied, you're then a bit of a sitting duck in terms of defensive position.
Yeah.
Okay, so interesting. I'm not sure where we're going to go with this one. So where will we put Wolf?
Yeah, again, he's on paper like an A. Like, he's got a really good all-round kit. But when you start looking at the way the meta plays into him and the ways you can get around his feet and the problems he has in list building, I think it becomes a B for me. And I think he's a B below Caine. I don't think he's as good as Caine. That's still very much viable. Like, if you're a hardcore Wolf fan and you want to go play a Wolf, I think you can make it work, right? I think if you invest a lot of reps and a lot of time into really learning how to maximize the position of the feat, you understand well which matchups the feat's brilliant in and which ones it's not so good in. I think you can go and win tournaments with Wolves. Like, I absolutely encourage people to go and do that. But for me, he is just a slightly worse Calder. Like, he has a similar player style, but I just prefer the way Calder did it.
Yeah, I totally get that. Just a quick one through. There's quite a few people in the chat, which is awesome. If you guys could let me know if my audio is great, I would be most appreciated, because I've got a new mic, and that would be great feedback. But no, I totally agree with your sort of thoughts on Wolf. Do you think if the meta was more, because I don't have a very well informed on the meta, but as far as I understand, single wound infantry isn't very popular. And it's largely sort of multi-wound infantry, so less models to be killed, and guns are fairly prominent. Do you think if the meta doesn't help what he wants to do as well?
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of the core problem I already mentioned was 3 factions having Silence of Death is rough. But then, like you said, there's so many gun lines, I think a lot of the gun lines we're seeing as well are really heavy on AoEs. And Wolf is not a big fan of AoEs. Like, you can give blast resistance to any of the infantry with the Stormbanes. So the Stormblades, armor 18 and shield wall blast resistance like that, you're not killing those with blast damage, but Stormguard can die quite easily to it, and obviously then you're losing feat triggers. So yeah, I think he kind of struggles into gun lines. He struggles into any of those armies that can bring a lot of RFP. Orgoth, I think he can struggle into, because they've also got quite a bit of snacking and Signs of Death. Kyrax, I think he can struggle into, and I've just found too many matchups where I'm like, actually no, I'd rather just have Calder's defensive feat here, because it always works.
And do you think the difference for you between the Calder and the Wolf is A, the speed that Calder brings, and B, the defensive feat? They're the two.
Yeah, I think, like, fundamentally, as a defensive feat, like I said, with no context whatsoever, Wolf has a significantly better defensive feat. You can bring loads of scenario play with it by moving models around. You can apply all sorts of pressure. You can bring loads of techie guns. Like, it's really flexible, and you can put your opponent under tons of clock pressure. But I think as you ascend to those kind of higher and higher ranks, and you start playing Wolf at the top tables more and more, and you're going to play into some really high level players, they're going to know exactly how to play into it, right? And I think your feat gets kind of exponentially worse against better and better players, whereas Calder's feat is much more stable. Like, into kind of new and returning players, Calder's feat is simple, it works. Into really, really strong players, Calder's feat is simple and it works. It doesn't depend on you. It doesn't depend on my positioning particularly. It just works. And like I said, there's too many matchups where Wolfe's feat, I think, is less effective. So yeah, I just turn to Calder for the feat reliability and the threat extension.
Yeah, and that makes total sense. The guys in the chat have confirmed that the audio is solid. So thanks, guys. That's really good to know. Yeah, that makes sense. And I suppose, like you say, in isolation, if you read both feats without knowing that you could negate Wolfe's feat, you know, from an outsider, you might say, "Wow, that seems really good." But like you say, when you practically play the game, you were almost, like you say, the better your opponent is, the more they play around it, which you can't do to +2 defense because you are +2 defense.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. We're looking good. We're down to the last one. I would say last but not least, but we're definitely at the smallest one. We are Adept Sparkhammer. We are 17 boxes. We're Speed 5, Mat 7, Rat 6, Def 13, I'm a 17, so a bit low on the Def. Arcana 7, but Control 12. Which is misleading because we're going to go to Arcane and Machinery once per turn. At any time, you can do one of these 3 abilities. You can reduce the cost of each spell you cast by 1 to a minimum of 1 for that activation. You can have Ionization, which affects your control range. And when a model without electrical resistance suffers an electrical damage roll while within your control range, you get +2 to the roll. And lastly, but not least, you've got Vexing Alignment, where your control range gains 4 inches, so you're going to be control 16, not 12. We've got a gun, which coincidentally is ranged control, so 12 or 16. It's power 14, it's rat 6, it ignores concealment, cover, elevation, and stealth. And on a critical hit, you KD. And it's got hammer, which has got beat back, and does D3 electro leaps when it hits you. We've got a feat, which lets you use all 3 of your abilities once per game. So you're going to cast spells for less, you're going to have Ionization, and you're going to have a bigger control range. On top of this, friendly models can reroll Storm Call attack and damage rolls, and they're on your Storm Callers. Are they called now?
Yeah, it's on most of the Calder stuff. So himself, his own gun, the Storm Callers, and the weather stations.
Excellent. And this is going to last for 1 turn. So as well as that, you're going to have 4 spells and 2 rack slots. So you're going to have Inhospitable Ground, which can be your control. Lovely when you've got a 16-inch control. It's rough terrain. Jackhammer, classic. 20 focus, make an attack. Mobility, which is +2 speed and Pathfinder for your battle group. And you've got Sunhammer, enemy, War Beast, and Warjacks that advance more than 1. And their normal movement in the spellcaster's range have a D3 points of damage. What do you think about the little man?
Okay, I think Sparkhammer is really interesting. He was last year's star boy. Like, he was, any time anybody last year was like, what do I do into Storm Legion? It was, what do I do into Sparkhammer? He was the main man. Fundamentally, like, he didn't get changed at all in the January update. Like, his card is exactly the same as it was. Not one change was made, but it's all context for him. So the Stormcallers got nerfed slightly. They lost 2 power on their melee attack, which was kind of justified, but they also lost a power on their ranged attack, bringing them down to 11. So kind of with Ionization and at the end of the Storm called chain, where for each one of them that's hit, the other one then gets, the following one gets +1 to hit damage. Now get to 15s, which is still respectable, but given the other options you've got in the faction, when you can get a lot of infantry that start at 14 with no relevant triggers, you know, and sort of all the sprays from the the Storm Throwers. So that context change hurt him a little bit. But it was then, for me, the changes to Huxley. So I think they're 2 comparable casters because they're both threat extending and they're both bring Jackhammer. Like, that's a core part of the way that each of them play. Huxley's feat allows him to kind of have a similar effect as Sparkhammer's Arcade Machinery in spamming Jackhammer. And I think the differences between these that makes me not like Sparkhammer as much anymore is quite subtle, and it's all down to order of activation. So with Huxley, you in your maintenance phase, you go Sky Mode, and the threat extension is just then present. So your threat extension exists before Jackhammer. In Sparkhammer, mobility is not on upkeep, and obviously he can't cast it before his activation. So he has to activate first. So you can't actually get mobility on the Warjacks that you then intend to Jackhammer. So that's always something that's quite difficult. Obviously he brings this nice gunline, McStorm's option, but I think the the hit that Stormcaller has received in the update has just tweaked him down. He brings great control tech. I think Inhospitable is great. Sunhammer is... I want to like it. It's terrible. It's just a bad spell. There are very, very, very few matchups where you might bother casting it for one focus on your feat turn. You know, if the opponent's got like 6 War Beasts, fair enough. Like, maybe it's worth it. But it's ultimately just kind of bad. I think his defensive stats also hurt him a little bit. Like, armor 17 is reasonable, defense 13 is just poor. So he's also quite susceptible to dying a little bit, like Caine has been. So yeah, I like him. He's flexible. He's got nice options on the tabletop, but I think he has the same problem Wolfe has for me, and that's that the kind of list I actually wanted to play with him was just Huxley but worse, basically.
Sure. So I suppose first of all, to make the most of him, you're forced to bring an element of Stormcallers or Stormvanes, or so you're sort of built into this. You know, part of my package is going to be this Stormcaller package, and then like you say, to get the threat that you want, you're then forced to go with him first, counterintuitive to Jackhammer, which makes complete sense. Death 13. I was surprised because I played against him twice now. I didn't even know Sunhammer was a spell, so that says a lot about Sunhammer. And I was surprised because I played him once with Firequill, and I was like, okay, you're defense 30, number 17. Do you have force barrier? And he was like, nope. I was like, oh, okay, you're just defense 30, number 17. So that is not an attractive stat line. And I suppose, like you say, you're probably going to bring sort of a mixed arms sort of force that relies a bit on your shooting with your sort of ionization, which you can do in a more flexible way of Huxley, where you can bring some good battle group shooting. But then you've got this duality of Huxley with a bit more freedom that your speed buff starts passively in the turn, and you're not locked into any sort of Stormvane, Stormcaller plays.
Agreed.
Is there anything like rack-wise you think is specifically great with Sparkhammer?
I think, well, there used to be for me, and I think before the January update, I think he worked really well with Lightning Pulse, because it's a little nuke that no one really ever tended to rack. But being able to cast it for 1, he's only Arcane Attack 6, which is kind of sad, but it had matchups where you can just kill 2 models every time you cast it, and you could arc it through the Stormvanes, and before the change in January, the officers gave Reaper. So what you would do is you'd walk your Stormvanes forward. The front guy, you port it as far forward as possible, he would become an Arc Node. The other 2 would Windweaver. He would then reposition forward, they would reposition backwards, and you had this great Arc Node spot when you went to Arc Lightning Pulse, like from complete safety, like 5 or 6 times. Like, that was a really good combination. But other than that, like, that's less effective now without the Reaper given to the unit. It's technically you could tactical supremacy, but that's a lot of work. He is, frankly, probably the same as most of the other casters. Electrify, Deflection, Arcane Shield are the obvious ones you're going to turn for. Snipe is probably not so worth it with him, unless you're going to play the Sparkhammer Maelstrom variation, which I do like, because obviously Maelstrom jackhammering like 7 or 8 times is very, very scary. So there I can see Snipe, you know, that sort of a double bombard, ionization, 8 jackhammer on the Maelstrom kind of a build. That totally works. I like that. So in that situation, you'd probably bring something like Snipe and Arcane Shield. You kind of maybe swap them around on the Maelstrom. I've seen double Maelstrom lists, which were played by one of the Germans, Robin, quite a bit, and that's a really cool idea as well. So I do like that. But again, with his arcane machineries, he can bring most of the rack and make it work. So you can bring your nukes, you can bring your defensive spells and just cast them cheaply. You can bring Deflection and go, I'm just going to cast it for 2. Like, it's much more efficient than casting for 3. So it's quite versatile there. One of the problems I am yet to mention with him is his playstyle is really, really good into single wounded infantry. And as we touched on 5 minutes ago, that's not very popular in the meta. The only single wounded infantry spam lists at the minute, before we kind of see how Gravediggers shake out, they may popularise it a little bit, are in Storm Legion. Like, it's Wolfe and Calder, right? But none of the ionization, none of the Stormcall stuff works very effectively on all of these lightning resistant models. So he has this problem where the only real small based infantry spam is the one faction that is entirely resistant to what he wants to do. And originally he kind of thought, Cricks and Dusk, but then the other ones that he could capitalise into. But the changes to the way they're now playing with the lists they're now kind of bringing is they're actually stepping away from single wound infantry as well, I'd say. So I think it's, again, all context. Like, he was brilliant. He's not really changed. His list maybe got slightly worse. Like, there's the change to the Zephyrs as well. They got 2 points more expensive in the January update, whilst gaining buffs, but they got more expensive. I think the lists that you used to run with him just don't work anymore, unfortunately. So you have to reinvent him, and I think you can. I think you can play with the Maelstroms. I think that's a viable option. But like I said, he has the same problem as Wolfe, where he just doesn't do what I want him to do as well as another caster does.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. A quick one to the chat. We're probably getting towards the end of it. So if you've got any questions for Leo, make sure you fire them off sooner rather than later. Leo's obviously got a lot of experience and is a really high level player, so I'm sure he'd love to answer your questions. So yeah, absolutely, totally agree with what you've just said there. In terms of Sparkhammer and the tier, where would you like to put the guy with the biggest hammer?
This is another tricky one. I think he's got to go C, unfortunately. It's all context. I just don't think he really has very many good matchups at all. Again, on paper, and you get this with a lot of Storm Legion casters, on paper, very good. If I was pulling Sparkhammer out of Storm Legion context and I was going to go and drop him in another tier list with another faction and compare him to those casters, I think he'd come higher up. I think compared to Caine, Wolfe, Huxley and Calder, who are above him, I just don't think he's anywhere near as good at the minute. You can write lists with him, and I think you could do well with him, but for me, he's got to go C, unfortunately.
And would
he lacks versatility.
Above or below Athena?
He's got to go below. I think he's currently the weakest link in Signal. I don't think he's bad, though. I just think he's limited in the kind of the meta situation we're in. I just don't think the matchups that he wants to play are there. Those lists are just not present at the minute.
That's fair. Not only is he closest to the ground, he's closest to the bottom of the tier list as well. So he's got it in common. No, but I do agree that sort of like also the meta ratings or like the tier ratings that we do here are only really for a laugh. But I think it's important to note also that they're also in context of the meta, right? If single wound infantry was ace and it was a really melee-centric single wound infantry meta, I'm sure Wolfe and Sparkhammer would be fantastic.
Absolutely.
But they are in relation to what they will see across the table, and when you're making a list pairing, that gives quite a lot of weight to the caster.
Agreed.
Fantastic. So we've ended up with all of them in a place. We've got S for Calder, we've got A for Huxley, B very good, we've got Caine and Wolfe, and C just for good, we've got Athena and Sparkhammer. In terms of sort of the overall faction, how sort of do you think they stand up right now?
I think it's undeniable that Storm Legion are top 3 in meta at the minute. I think the January update did so much for them. The change to Electrify was absolutely enormous, because before the January update it was target model, not model/unit. That's the big thing. Yeah, that's the big change there. The change to Huxley is absolutely brilliant. There's a lot of subtle tweaks. The Sailors got better, so I think the faction's in a really strong place. I think they're undeniably top 3 at the minute. I think they have some great casters for sort of returning and newer players they can pick up. Like I said, I think Calder's the best caster in the faction. And I think she's really easy to learn, but I think she's still got quite a high ceiling. Like, I think you can just play her and keep finding new ways that you can leverage her tech. So yeah, I think they're in a great place, and they're extremely fun to play. I don't think they're necessarily overpowered. I think they've got a few combinations that are really potent, but no, I think they're in a great place, and I think they fit well within the meta. I think they've got weak matchups. I think they've got strong matchups. When I played them, I didn't feel like I was advantaged in every game. I had matchups where I genuinely went in. I was like, this is going to be difficult. So yeah, I think Storm Legion are in a great spot, and I would encourage anybody to pick them up and give them a go.
Oh, fantastic. Nice. Kelvin, Nemo replacement coming out short. Great comment. We like it. More of that. Yeah. And they seem, like you say, they've got a few warcasters, say like Athena or Calder, which are quite nice for returning players, and then it's quite nice that you can maybe go into sort of a Huxley or or a Caine or a Wolfe is maybe it was a bit more going on. I thought of another question which I was going to ask, which I'll ask now. But Kelvin's got a question. What are the general combos we could expect to see from Storm Legion? And I suppose that really is probably referring to like what is the most common list pairing you will see from Storm Legion.
Most common list pairing has evolved over the last couple of months. When post-January update, I went straight into Huxley and Calder. Caine was far more present in pairings at the time, but over time, more of viewed sort of the Longshanks lists. Huxley and Calder has just slowly become more and more common. We saw quite a lot of Wolfe and Caine at the start, but I think that's slowly shaken out at the minute, and I think Huxley and Calder is kind of universally now the pairing to bring. I think that's what we're going to see. I think there are slight variations in those lists. I think you can expect to see Huxley, generally speaking, with 3 courses and then probably 3 or 4 heavies. That's the list you can expect to see there. With Calder, you've got a little bit more variation. You're either going to see, probably always going to see sort of double Cav, double or triple Stormguard, but you're expecting to either see a Maelstrom or probably 2 heavies. So those are the kind of variations you expect there. They're quite typical lists though, which I think's quite nice to kind of plan what you want to do into them. No one's going to bring like a really bizarre radical Calder list that you weren't expecting. Like it's very typical lists where there are nuances between them, but they've all got the same core principles.
I suppose the nice thing about those 2 lists is I always like 2 lists that are different. You know, like I think it's quite easy in Brian Blood to say to run like 4 Mordecai in both lists, but I don't like that because I think it makes the list decision very easy for your opponent. So it's quite nice that you've got 7 cohort models and then a more orientated infantry list. That makes the decisions a lot harder, right? So I really like that.
No, that's a great point. That's really delightful. Although I'll tell you, traveling overseas with that was horrible. Because I played in the Belgian Masters, and flying with a Maelstrom and then all of these really fragile Stormguard next to all of your heavies, it was not enjoyable.
Yeah, but, I can only
really
imagine.
Nice to see these different. I really like the visual appeal of those lists as well. You've got this brilliant, all these heavies with Huxley, who's a really big tanky caster, looks awesome, and then you've got this dude spam list with just a Maelstrom in the middle. So yeah, I think visually the models are great, and I think those casters are really rewarding to kind of paint and enjoy that process of, and that side of the hobby as well.
Yeah, I think they've the Storm Legion actual visually look fantastic. Great shout. And I can in terms of traveling, I was very lucky with Gilbert. I had like 10 infantry scale models. It was in like a tiny KR
Sounds
case,
delightful.
and even then I was like, I hope they don't break. But I can only imagine bringing a
it was awful
brittle resin army across the sea. That would be a bit of a nightmare. Kelvin, any Merc combos that work well with certain casters and lists that should be considered?
Okay, I think Invictus has a place in a couple of lists. I think Invictus is great with Athena. I think Invictus is really, really good with Caine and very much underappreciated. One thing, if anyone here is looking at what I said about Caine and goes, I really wanted to play Caine, try Caine out with Invictus. Bring a couple less guns and bring this universal, like threat 13 in melee, applies some pressure, buys you some space. Your opponent's army can't just rush you and force engagement soon because you've got this good threat, good output, threshering Warjack that just buys you space. That's a great combination I like. Kruger is a fantastic solo. You can put him in absolutely any list and he will work every single time. Garrity has his place, so Garrity I would put in Caine quite a lot of the time because, like I said earlier, you've got a few really high quality attacks. Bringing a reroll is just obviously great. Same with Wolfe, because you can reroll the feat attacks because Puppet Master doesn't expire at the end of the turn. So that's a nice combo. Alexia is she's what I took most of the time. I put Alexia in both of my Huxley and Calder lists, mainly for cavalry because there's nothing more demoralising than losing your cavalry and then just kind of being stuck with 1, maybe 2 models. So Grim Returns is great there. Additionally, Death Toll doesn't come up very often on a Threat 10 model, but the absolute dream, and I've lived this a couple of times, and it's truly the best feeling as a Storm Legion player you can ever get, which is Alexia charges, kills an enemy warrior model, triggers Death Toll, brings back an Assailer, it's medium base, crucially at full health, puts it straight back in Shield Wall, it goes straight back to Armor 23, and then Battle Wizards and Grim Returns a cavalry model. It's not every game, but it's absolutely glorious. I actually played a game against Brian Bloods where she had like a 20 sort of 30-point game. She killed a lot of trolls and brought back a lot of assailants and cavalry. So I think she's got great places in any of your more infantry spam lists. I think the balloons in Signar are fairly good. I think generally less popular obviously now than they used to be. But I think Athena in particular, if you like balloons, Athena's I think the place to put them because the feet works on them. So that's a great combination. Iris is the only piece from Merck's point of view that I just never felt a desire to put on a list. I think she's got great potential. She's just too expensive. Signar have a lot of great cheap options. You've got a lot of situations where with a Warjack it's quite easy to just subtly upgrade them if you've got a bit of spare points. You've got some really the best 3-point solos in the game, right? The officers are just so good. So Iris is the one piece I've always found that I've just never managed to put on a list.
Yeah, and also I find with the way Blast works, like I think it's like armor 13 or 12. And I've had games where I've just like
She's armor 14.
Oh,
She's
14. Okay.
Not too
Fair.
bad, but it's a 5-point solo, and something like a Bison's going to come along, and even if you give her blast resistance, it's just going to kill her.
Yeah. That's the thing that I've found against Eris is that I've had like a Raef troll be like, I'm 15 inches away, I'm going to miss you, and I still kill you because it's AOE.
Really
So yeah, that's a bit of a shame. First and Honey. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing your first name correct. I'm so sorry. When fighting into them, what are Storm Legion pieces the opposition should be looking to take out early if possible?
Okay, so again, this is obviously going to be list dependent. I think it changes obviously from caster to caster. So the first thing I'll approach there is Wolfe and Calder are often going to bring like pretty similar lists. Wolfe's going to often bring Maelstrom, lots of infantry. Calder's going to bring Maelstrom, lots of infantry. Against Wolfe, I think you want to remove the Maelstrom as early as possible if you can. If you can kill the Maelstrom on the Wolf player's feet turn, like you're in an incredibly strong position. Against Calder, I'd advise the exact opposite. I've played so many games where by turn 6-7, I have Calder, my Maelstrom with full health, right, full health, completely untouched, my unit mechanics, and that's it, and everything else is dead. And those games are not always very easy to win. Then against sort of Huxley, it's always going to be the general. Like if the Huxley play gives you an opportunity to kill the general, go for it. Unless you're trading, so much of your army to do it. So I played a great game into one of my team members, Dean, at the Belgian Masters on Saturday. We played a really chilled out game, and he landed a Hand of Destruction on the general with Shiris and just used guns to kill him, and it was devastating. Like it made the game so much harder. So the general's always going to be one in any list he's ever present in that you're going to want to take out because that model will do so much work. Into Caine, it's going to be Deuce as well. So the character jacks are very, very good in the right lists. Deuce is less relevant into sort of Chimera and Brian Bloods, obviously Decrepitation being less impactful there. If you're a Dusk or a Crix player, like absolutely Deuce is always the first target in any list he's present in. And then sort of just general advice, if Kruger's ever present, I always like to try and remove Kruger first, because if you get mid-late game and you've kind of starting to run out of boostable attacks, Kruger's going to make a mess of a flank and you're never going to get him.
Yeah, Kruger is a real pain. Those boostable sprays, they really tear apart stuff quick. And also like the forfeiting movement to then place A he's a pain in the rear. I suppose
really good.
The officers again. I suppose that if you can get to them, they're great to get.
If you can, yes. You almost never will be able to until I've like charged them in.
Yeah.
So like with Calder, my officers are always the furthest things back. I've had games where my officers have been 6 inches from my board edge, and the furthest forward models I've had are well over the halfway line, because I only need them to be within 11 inches of something that I intend to apply a battle plan to. But when you're talking cavalry units where I'm going to repo one model forward, one model backwards, I could apply Pathfinder to them from the Legion officer being really far away. If your opponent gives you the option to ever kill the Legion officers, take it. They are, in my opinion, probably the best 3-point solos in the game. I think they're the best model in Signar. I think they're absolutely phenomenal. They're so flexible in what they can do. They bring really, really great support tech, and they're incredibly dangerous, especially in Calder. where they've got 13.
Because it's really Pathfinder, Grievous Wound, or Precision Strike for their battle plan.
Exactly, and those, a lot of times those sort of support solos have one really good battle plan, one like situationally pretty good, and then one kind of bad. That's a Precision Strike, which is always excellent in a Calder list where you bring in so many models, and often a Maelstrom. Charging cavalry through a Maelstrom is just delightful. Pathfinder, again, brilliant. The faction doesn't have much of it. Our cavalry don't natively have it. The heavies can have relentless charge, so there are some models that can natively have it, but that's about it. So you really want that Pathfinder option. Less relevant in Huxley, just as a quick thing, because Skystormer also gives Pathfinder to the battle group. And then Precision, and then Deathly Strike. Sorry, it's not in every matchup choice, but against trolls, against cricks, against sort of dusk with the cavalry, it's got a lot of places where it's really potent. And even if we're not talking tough infantry, going, okay, I need to start peace trading. I know this is the Calder feat turn. Right, I'm gonna send this cavalry in. It's a 10-point investment, but I'm gonna give them Grievous Wounds. I'm gonna give them Arcane Shield. It's the feat turn, so I'm gonna go into a Wyvern. I know mathematically I'm not gonna kill it, but I might cripple its spirit or its mind or really debilitate it. I'm going to apply Grievous. I'm just going to cause you this big inconvenience, and then we've got a 15 sort of 23 to melee unit sat in your lines. So I think it's just so versatile and so brilliant. And then they have a really solid, powerful melee attack that has Electro Leap, and they have a gun that has Electro Leap. So then when the officers get involved, they kill full units on a really good day.
Yeah. I mean, comparison to me is my booty boss, who has one very good plan in the Stir the Blood, a decent plan in set defense, a sort of situational one in Prowl, and then one range 12 Rat 6 hand cannon. So
it's just not the same, is it?
So I can see why you're such a fan of them. I think we'll wrap it up there. We've had a really, really good discussion. Thanks everyone who joined in the chat. We had loads of questions, which have been great. Mainly thank you, Leo, for your time and your insight. It's really great too. This is the first time we've really got to properly speak, so it's been lovely to speak to you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you again for all of your sort of wisdom and your insight into the Storm Legion faction. I'm hoping that people listening will be inspired, if they don't play it, to maybe pick up, and if you're not planning on playing, you've got a bit more information of what you might see across the field. A big thank you to everyone. We'll probably call it here. Any sort of closing thoughts maybe on Storm Legion in general, Leo?
Storm Legion, great fun, lovely to paint. Anyone who's on the fence about Warmachine and about Storm Legion in particular, give it a go. They've got really great entry-level casters, they've got really great depth, they've got a lot of really enjoyable combinations, and I think they're a very rewarding army to play. I think there's a lot of casters that can pull synergies and moves that just feel really lovely to get off. Even if it's not instantly winning you the game, there's nothing better than a really successful, Huxley charges something with this heavy, then gets a Reaper, and then Huxley goes and jackhammers. It's a really delightful experience. So go play Storm Legion.
And visually, they look great. So
they're lovely models.
It's only good things. Thank you everyone in the chat. Next week we've got Jamie, so we're going to try and play the stream at 0.5 speed. We're going to talk about Shadow Flame. It's going to be really good. So thank you, Leo. Thank you, the stream, and we'll see you soon. We'll see you guys.